Billie and Larry for having us, for hosting us here, and for Kim and Joel for reading. I'm also going to read what I think is prose, one longer piece and then one shorter piece that I found in a notebook. Imagination of theater as dreamless sleep. When I wake up on the island, tall sheer curtains echo the tall bare trees, echo and breathe with the words of my dream, long flowing translucencies figuring riddles into my skeletal extremity. The outermost edges of the island engulf me, mirror my bed, sending me deeper into my dream, mirroring me. I've been watching every film I can find in the Technicolor period. The desire to pursue the path of color rather than plot is a way I find myself leaning. Is this evasive or wholesome? Why does my equation or question imply that being evasive isn't virtuous? What if you incessantly evade and slowly begin to form a movement, a rhythm, gentle leaping away from all objects of attention towards the fine and unfixated, so as to compose a whole, thereby becoming wholesome? I think of Goethe writing "Color is the suffering of light," or Stan Brakhage in Metaphors on Vision writing, "Imagine an eye unruled by man-made laws of perspective," or the statement by Jack Smith on his film Normal Love that he wanted to make a movie about the colors pink and green. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, mnemonic strategy, names more abstract than names for what they point to, hot, saturated refuge, speakeasies of the brain, pigments, pixels, more names, more abstractions for the immediate, silent taking in. Color is, under love, or it's out, it, squared fire, sleeping in flower. What is this fascination with color that other filmmakers, writers, thinkers, painters share? The painter Ted Denier confided in a mutual friend that once he fell in love with the colors of the world, that when he would gaze upon, say, a crowd of forsythia in afternoon light, or a sun setting streaks through silver steel, he would half whistle, half sigh, through his teeth, through his heart, a mutual inhalation, exhalation, ancient waltz of taking part of the world in, part feeling the world out. Is my infatuation with color a fantasy that the objects of my attention could be entirely absent of human drama? That anyone could exist without pettiness, envy, sorrow? That there could be an alternative dimension to being human? One in which a dream I had recently may have been alluding to. The words I woke up with were, light moves through form, then form obscures that light. Sharing it now, it sounds simple, but there was a hum above my body of the dream, from my eyelids, throat, chin, torso, hips, legs. Words were weather vanes, confused me, did not direct. Light made the world, and then what light made evaded it. When I watch a Technicolor movie, the vibrancy of the possessed red shoes or Robin Hood's pointed green cap for a moment can be all-consuming, or a cut from red to green is a story without needing to tell, a silent, understood fullness of frame, storage or the suggestion of, away from apparent story, away from buildings of thought and their maintenance. Could there be a radical departure in adornments? In the worst neighborhoods I've ever walked in, I've always seen ornamentation, whether it be a curl above a window or a florid cantilever, and these little accents, whether ugly or beautiful. I can remember this horrible intersection in the doorway of the thread store was a sad frozen cement of vines and flowers, and the thought that made me cry was, there is a desire so desperately to live beyond utility, fantasies through color, working like conspiracy, curling decoupage of exits, ways out of worlds, stories, always another. In Wim Wenders' Wings of Desire, the two main characters are angels. They observe and provide heavenly, non-judgmental ear to the delicate and maze-worthy inner monologues of the humans. The angels don't have stories. They live in a world of black and white, light and shadow, and in what begins to feel like not the freedom of infinity but its prison, one of the angels chooses to leap from his heavenly seat and become human, dive into a story. In disavowing himself of his heavenly perch, he becomes a subject of heavenly agency. He leaves his devotion, and isn't this the role of a poet, to remain within an infinity of monologues, to stay an angel or aspire to be not human, to rebel, and Lucifer himself rebelling against the angels becomes the most angelic. Light makes forms, then evades the forms light makes. To render humanness in every sense, but to let go of the fibers of your singular self and to go on, blown wide open. I wrote once on a train in San Francisco, Buddhism is essentially the study of strangers, mostly yourself, ornate happenstance of circumstance of voices, magnolias breathed in underneath the guise of neighbors. Whatever happens to lapse or ask for attention within a moment of speaking. And what could you say is your own voice? Are you trying to find your voice? I've been drawn more towards voices, which could be anyone's or anything, and closer towards the disappearance of voices rather than their projections, more seduced by than the assertion of a fundamental tone. No self could instead be a polyphonic pointillism of selves, and surreal but unconfigured, and baroque but not imposing. I'm walking to the post office and feel shards and frays and glints of light across the eaves of Christmas lights on the barn red house across from me. Spirals of endings and beginnings of lives other than mine, lives I've already lived, could live, or lives of others being lived alongside of me, corsages. I feel my breath cold, fogged, a heavy vitality, still and staunchly undergoing my survival of definition. That I have a name and height and weight confuses me. I misunderstand the compressed density of my crappy individuality. Alone inside the hedges of proper nouns, a dark torture of a foil deforms, normalizes, curls, circumambulates other selves in shadows, in tiny shifting stories, dizzy, incomplete, while meanwhile epic selves crouch in fossils of moments, again of monologues, etched in the tribal gray, inaudible outline of a giant vibrant tree of lives shining in some other morning summer sun, unimaginable, at best or worst or west, but wish-fulfilling and existing. I feel I've lost the biological, or turned away long ago, blood bonds issuing back, rehearsing familial urgencies and tragedies. The Godfather, he said, was going to be the ice-blue, terrifying film about people you love. I'm living past the point in which I could conceivably conceive. I may not be a mother. I haven't been a wife. If color is a way, could you say it's a sacrifice? Could you go that far? Conceptless, feeling for, pawing for, a reasonable privacy of softness, language so only as to get lost inside of, feeling ever so slightly freed from a cheap, wretched modernity, or more so, timeless coercion, my own worst enemy, always brought back into life or out of it, angels either at the edge of your ear or a precipice, point, line to plane. I thought it was my station to evade all human power. All power was a plot. All plot was our biology. To be mine fully flower, I thought. All my words could be published posthumously. The theater of dreamless sleep is the one in which all actors have no objective, no method, no experiences of their own from which to draw. They act like totems, like colors graze form, adorn the unborn, go home into dreams. Every frame of reference is not an orientation but a sadness. All glee is without captions. Everything that happens on stage can barely be recognized. Forms like light, pervasive yield, shield themselves from the dampness of human candor. You have to remember that in the middle of the movie there's a storyteller. In the spirals of the library, he's almost chanting his prerogative. He's neither angel nor human, neither voyeur nor actor, and by telling a story, he's not in one. I feel comfortable barely remembering. I feel primal on the tip of my tongue. I didn't grow up, I grew in, hovering, finally forged, marked as a gulp. The frogs in Basho's poem, quartz sinking or receding, depending upon the body of water. Cold chaos of an old antique collector, trying to find technicolor, lowered in my limbs, ultimately, a gaze inward. I looked for an explanation of the invention of my hesitation. In no drama, audience members were encouraged to fall asleep, so their sleeping selves, cradled in their dreaming worlds, could communicate with the present masked actors, uphold them and lead them. Actors and dreamers, each gifts of the unconscious undulating, mourning no different from celebrating, the same stage out of which this dusky happiness, through the fraying stitchwork of an old worn-in quilt held up against the lingering sun, usurp a dialogue that inserted its interest into a critical bow. Situations observe the stitches of their own intangibility. How could you perform a human drama without rehearsing, without endlessly rehearsing, without repeating the initiations of human life? Without a child, I thought, I will not participate in the shared performance of human life. I will be a divergence. Ever since I can remember, I've always wanted to be a gangster. So said Henry Hill. A gangster is no different from an angel, from an artist in my register. I dive into the marigold raspberry neon of summer without the rehearsing of human life. I will not exist twice in the overlapping of my own. As I'm writing, I'm only ending when I feel the knots in my body have opened. I can't stop talking until I feel left on the tenor of a floating chord. I think I'm not going to read the other one. So.